I love Super Mario 64, and I love challenge runs. Today, I decided to combine those two and see how many stars we can get in the original Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64, while not harming any enemies. Mario is a pacifist. He wants to collect the stars, but he doesn't want to hurt anything or anyone in order to do it. For those of you who are unfamiliar, there are 120 stars in Super Mario 64, divided into 15 courses as well as some secret courses. Each course has 6 main stars and a 100 coin star. So we're going to see how many of those we can get. As you're about to see, I am not a speedrunner or an expert. I can't do things like... for in a while. Oh! I did it! It's my first time ever doing that. I can't believe I just did it. I still can't believe. Literally, guys, I have practiced that trick. That is the first time I'd ever pulled it off. Trust me, I'll mess up some other stuff later on, but pretty funny. Has no impact on the challenge. Kinda cool. All right, as our challenge begins, the only stage that's accessible to us is the stage I'm in right now, Bob-omb Battlefield. In order to make things easier, I'm going to collect a single star and head to stage 2, Whomp's Fortress. The easiest star to get is the one behind Chain Chomp's Gate. Now, speedrunners use a trick that would require us to hurt a Bob-omb. Can't do that. So we're just going to do it the plain old intended way. I wondered whether or not this was harming the Chain Chomp because it destroys the gate, but I realized it's actually freeing him, so if anything, we're doing a good thing. So I think this still counts as pacifism. We will come back here later. This stage was a nightmare. Next, we're gonna go to Whomp's Fortress. So I realize now I probably should have gone in order for the sake of the video, but I didn't. I decided to get the really tedious red coins and 100 coin stars out of the way. In case you don't know, in each of the 15 main courses in Super Mario 64, the 7th star involves just collecting 100 coins. Red coins are worth 2, blue coins are worth 5, and you just have to collect as many as you can. Now, it's important to note that there are many coins within the stages that can only be acquired by defeating enemies. For example, if you defeat a piranha plant, you can get 5 coins via a blue coin. And if you defeat a Whomp, you get 5 coins via 5 yellow coins. And I wasn't completely sure whether there would be enough coins, even though there's 141, without interacting with any enemies. The answer is there was. All in all, there were 106 coins, and since, in case you don't know, red coins are never hidden behind enemies, they're always out in the open, we don't have to worry about that, and those are 2 stars down, stars 4 and 7. The next star I'm going to get is star 3, Shoot into the Wild Blue. Now, this is where things might get a little complicated, but I'm going to save it for a second, because although the intended strategy is to actually unlock the cannon and use it to get to this section and then slide down to get the star, which is nuts, you can just do a really easy side flip. This is actually much, much easier and quicker than the intended strategy. There's a couple stars I'll point out like that, but yeah, no enemies here, easy peasy. But that's it for the really easy stars. Now's where things start to get a little bit uncomfortable. Speaking of uncomfortable, I want you guys to see the chair I started doing YouTube videos with. Listen, it functions, but to sit in it for hours, whether it be editing or streaming, both of which I need to do to get you these videos, it wasn't great. That's where Flexispot came in. This is the beautiful C7 Max, and it is a game changer. The Flexi in Flexispot is for flexibility because this chair really lets you do it all. Just about everything can be adjusted on the Flexispot. You want to move the headrest up and down? No problem, adjust to your height. How about the entire backrest? That works too. Of course, the chair has very comfortable lumbar support, which is super helpful for someone like me with a bad back. You can even adjust the seat depth, so it's exactly where you want to be sitting in the chair. And the cushion, well, just look at it. It's extremely comfortable. The armrests are one of the coolest features. I mean, yeah, you can just kind of fidget around and play with them, but there's a practical purpose. Sometimes I want the arms really close to me when I'm editing. Sometimes I need more room. It's just amazing to have armrests that are this flexible. But that's not all. The chair, as you would expect, of course, reclines back. But the coolest thing about this chair is something I've never seen before, this footrest. It's perfect for someone like me who enjoys sitting cross-legged during long sitting sessions. If you're interested in the Flexispot, do I have good news for you? First off, they offer a 30-day return policy for a risk-free trial. They also offer a 10-year warranty with direct replacement for damaged parts. Now, the chair you've seen me demonstrate is the C7 Max, but there are tons of other chairs available on Flexispot's website. In fact, they've just launched a new chair, the C7 Morpher, with upgraded lumbar and back support. So you can go to flexispot.com and browse various chairs which can meet your budget and needs. However, if you want the best deal, for $50 off, you gotta click the link in the description or pinned comment and use my code C750 for your awesome Flexispot chair. Alright, so back to Mario 64. It's time we talk about the first star of the 120 we cannot acquire, Chip Off the Whomp's block. The problem with this star is that you have to defeat King Whomp, and that would involve defeating an enemy, which we're not allowed to do. So that one's out. But it also means to the top of the fortress is out, and this is where Mario 64 is kind of interesting. While most levels stay pretty much identical for each star, levels like Whomp's Fortress make changes, such as the fortress and star appearing from star 2 onward, sort of. What do I mean by sort of? Well, if I were to select star 3 or 4, which we have, you'll notice that the tower isn't present. The Whomp King still is. This is an interesting feature of Mario 64, where even though you can collect later stars whenever, until you collect the earlier star, it doesn't advance, let's call it, the level state. So because of that, there are some interesting consequences. One of them is that the second star will never spawn, so that's another star we can't get. But furthermore, for star 5, Fall Onto the Caged Island, we're not going to have the owl. The way you're supposed to do this star is go to this tree, the owl spawns, you ride it, you drop down into the star, easy peasy. You also can do a long jump from the tower, but like we talked about, no tower. Now speedrunners have a way, in fact they have an even better way, where they can go from this spinning green platform and do a triple jump and get in. I'm really bad at it, / have never done it before, but after about, I'd like to say about 4 or 5 minutes of trying, I managed to get one to work, and one is all we need for this challenge, so we are able to get star 5. We're also not going to be able to get star 6 the typical way, blast away the wall. That is because, since we haven't gotten star 1, the pink Bob-omb will never appear. Thankfully, for reasons I don't quite understand, Mario can still get the star. I think he does a bit of a ledge grab, but it's really quick. I don't know. I'm not Kays or Panenkoic. I don't know if I pronounced either of them correctly. I apologize. The point is, I don't know how to pronounce their names, and I'm not a Mario 64 expert. I got the star. It took me a while to get it, but that is all the stars we can get in Whomp's Fortress. 5 out of 7. Not bad. Alright, so with 6 stars, we can unlock the furthest right 3-star door, and that will give us access both to the Secret Aquarium as well as Jolly Roger Bay. The Secret Aquarium is just a red coin star. There's literally no enemies, so there's nothing really to say. That's another star we can get. And when it comes to Jolly Roger Bay, there are only 3 enemies in this stage whatsoever, and they're in the cave where you get the star Treasure of the Ocean Cave. There's also a blue coin switch. And this is where you might worry, are there going to be enough coins for 100? Well, there's 104 coins. Each Goomba gives 1 coin. So there's actually 101 coins. There is 1 coin to spare. So there's not that much to say about Jolly Roger Bay. Yay. Okay, I'll stop rhyming. But that is another 7 stars. And while we're quickly getting through stages, might as well talk about Princess's Secret Slide, as well as the Wing Cap stage. Neither of these stages have a single enemy. The slide has 2 stars. The Wing Cap stage has 1 star. No, The cap switch does not count as an enemy, and so we're gonna enter Cool Cool Mountain with a cool 17 stars. But will the stage with cool in its name twice be cool to us? Yes, it will. Cool Cool Mountain doesn't have many enemies in it either, and so we're going to be able to collect another 7 stars without much difficulty. If you're worried about coins, there are 136 enemy-free coins. There is actually 154 total coins. But yeah, we have more than enough to choose from. So after Whomps gave us a little bit of difficulty, that is now 2 main courses and 2 special courses, as they're known, that have been just pretty much completely free. But you know what they say, it's always calm before the storm. And we now have to go back to Bob-omb Battlefield. And oh boy, are things about to get really bad. First things first, once again, there's going to be 2 stars right off the bat that are inaccessible to us. Like the Whomp King fight, Big Bob-omb on the summit requires us to fight the Big Bob-omb, and so that's not going to happen in a pacifist run. And because of that, Koopa the Quick will never spawn, therefore we can't get into a foot race with Koopa the Quick. However, that's not all that's not going to spawn. The pink Bob-omb that allows us to open the cannons is also not going to spawn because we didn't get star 1. And so because of that, we're going to have to do some stars in really irritating ways. The first isn't so bad. Shoot to Island in the Sky, if I were better, you actually don't need to climb the mountain at all. There is a simple speedrunning trick, but you can just climb the mountain with the wing cap and fly over. That's pretty easy. In fact, you can actually long jump over if you want to from the summit. There's lots of ways to get to the island, so this one isn't bad. No, what's bad was the next star. Now, in my ultimate short-sightedness, I tried to combine this star with 100 coins, but this star, Mario Wings to the Sky, we're supposed to collect coins through 5 rings. Let me show you how this can look. That is the Nintendo intended strategy, but since we don't have the cannon, we have to make some really tricky jumps in order to just barely get all the coins. Now, the first 3 aren't that big of a problem. In fact, you can get one of them just standing stationary on the floating island. No, it's 4 and 5 which are really annoying. And this is where we have to talk about something. Love Mario 64, one of my favorite games ever. The camera sucks. Mario 64's camera has not aged super well, nor has its, let's call it, pop-in. Because as you'll notice, the coins just kind of pop in when you get close to them. Now, on a CRT screen with an original N64, you don't notice this as much because everything is just so grainy and looks terrible. But nowadays, with HDMI mods or FPGA or upscaling, it doesn't look great, but that's not the issue. The issue is, when I'm jumping, I have a hard time knowing exactly where to go. And, as far as I'm aware, but maybe I'm just not very good, without doing some crazy tricks, the only way for a, let's say, average skill player to get the coin is to actually, for a little bit of extra height, to do a ground pound. And this took me forever. But, thankfully, I got the star. And forgot the 100 coin star, so I had to do it again, combining it with reds. 100 coins isn't actually too bad because there are so many coins in these rings, but without the cannon, this was really tedious. This was actually not something I anticipated because I thought about enemies, stars that have enemies blocking things, but I didn't think about, oh yeah, if you don't beat King Bob-omb, you don't get the cannons, and without the cannons, this is gonna suck. But this star was probably one of the worst stars that we actually got. There are some other really bad ones, we'll talk about them. But before we leave Bob-omb Battlefield, another really annoying thing about this stage is that there's a lot of Bob-ombs, and if you get too close, the Bob-ombs activate and then explode, which to me doesn't feel like pacifism. So you have to kind of Metal Gear Solid your way to get one of the red coins, which is super fun. I've never played Mario 64 but a stealth game before. And so, suffice to say, by far the most difficult course we've done so far is the very, very first one. Isn't that ironic? Actually, that's not. That's not what the definition of irony is. But the way people use the word irony, it's ironic, but not the actual definition. All right, I'm just going to move on. Anyway, that gives us 28 stars. And under the absolute strictest interpretation of our rule set, this +1 might be the maximum that a human being could get. This is because, well, a couple of things. We're going to enter the first Bowser course, Bowser in the Dark World, and there is a red coin star that is fairly trivial to get, at least in the context of a pacifist run. Unfortunately, this is as far as we can get without defeating Bowser. Why? Well, in order to get to the basement, you need to get through a locked door, and the only way to unlock that door is to defeat Bowser. Now, there are tool-assisted runs that find a really cool way to skip that door, but since my name isn't Tass Rose, it's J Rose. J Rose 12 now. I can't do that. So for a human, 29 would be the most. But whoa, what about Big Boo's Haunt? Well, the problem with Big Boo's Haunt is in order to even get into the course, you need to defeat an enemy, a Boo. And it goes poof like any other Boo. There are other Boo enemies in the lobby. That's an enemy. That counts. So that is 7 stars that are inaccessible. Although, fun fact, if you don't consider lobby enemies to be enemies, which doesn't make any sense, but whatever, so many of the stage's stars require you to defeat enemies, there's actually only 2 stars you can get. This one that is supposed to be behind the library books, and the red coin star. That's it. For our purposes, all 7 are inaccessible because we can't access the stage, and without defeating Bowser, the run ends here. I'm going to make a Bowser exception because I think it's more interesting to see the entire game, but I submit to you, under the strictest interpretation of the rules, the answer, 29 stars. Alright, so we're gonna go to the basement now, and as soon as you get to the basement, you see everyone's favorite jumping rabbit, Mips. Now, grabbing Mips should be easy. I'm really bad at it. I shouldn't be, I practice this. But when you grab Mips, he kind of says yow, and I thought about it. It doesn't feel super pacifist to grab a rabbit that immediately tells you to put him down. I mean, it's not really defeating an enemy, but it seems like it's against the spirit of the rules, if you ask me. So, to be ultra safe, we're not gonna get either Mips star. I just feel like it's against the spirit of the rules. If you think I should have grabbed the Mips stars, then just add 2 to the total at the end, but I'm not gonna get them. Now we're gonna go to Shifting Sandland, and this is one of the more interesting stages. Now at this point, I didn't actually realize Wikipedia had some really detailed breakdowns of everything, and so I was trying to figure out whether I could get 100 coins. I will answer that in a second, but while I was doing that, I got one of the easiest stars in the game, although I got in a very roundabout way, star 3 shining atop the pyramid. I then decided to go and collect as many coins as I could. Now, Shifting Sandland is interesting because there are 2 halves of the level, let's say. There is the outside and the inside of the pyramid. You can't actually go back and forth. So once you go inside the pyramid, you're stuck there. You can actually get into the top of the pyramid. The way to do that is to stand on the 4 pillars, which is a star. Also one we're not going to get, but I'll get to that just a little bit later. And you can get to the top, which makes things a little easier. I went and ran around, and I had 76 coins, and I was convinced I missed some. Turns out, I didn't. I mean, I did. I wasn't sure if crazy boxes, those bouncy boxes at the beginning, are enemies. They're not classified as enemies. So, I was really just missing 2 of those. But yeah, 86 is the total amount of coins without defeating any enemies. That means this is going to be the first stage where 100 coins is impossible. Kinda neat. Now, because I was in the pyramid and collected all the coins, that would mean I got all the secrets, since the secrets are pretty much inside the coins, and I went and got that star. Yo, Future Jeros here. In making this video, I found a mistake on Wikipedia. So I obviously have 86 coins and I didn't get the crazy boxes. The reason for that is if you look at the breakdown, it shows 86 coins without enemies and then 50 coins from enemies. But then if you look at the breakdown just below the chart, I actually just put in an Excel spreadsheet and highlighted the enemy ones in red. It adds up to 40. So, in fact, I should have 96 coins if I got the crazy boxes. Those are clearly not enemies. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I will have edited the website to make it accurate, but yeah, caught a mistake. Neato. And what if I told you that the 100 coin star is not the only star we can't get in this level? There's 2 more of them. The first one is the one I talked about, Stand Tall on 4 Pillars. That's the one where you're supposed to defeat IROC. For obvious reasons, that's not going to be allowed. The other one may be controversial in the Talon of the Big Bird. Technically, Mario doesn't defeat the Big Bird when he crashes into him. Bird's name is Klepto, by the way. But, again, you are doing unwanted damage. I think it should count. And thus, of the stages we actually get to enter, Shifting Sandland, so far, has the most stars we can't get. In addition to the 2 you've already seen, we can get the red coin star, which you saw a little bit of, and inside the ancient pyramid. That's just 4 stars in Shifting Sandland. Will there be any stage we can collect even fewer? Well, next we entered Lethal Lava Land, and unfortunately, if you were hoping for maximum pain, the stage is pretty straightforward, and it will not have more inaccessible stars than Shifting Sandland. We do have to skip the first 2, since both Boil the Big Bully and Bully the Bullies require us to defeat enemies, but none of the other stars are all that challenging. It's just collect red coins. You can actually use the wing cap to completely trivialize red hot log rolling. Hot foot in the volcano, nothing really to say about that, nor elevator tour in the volcano. But if you were wondering about the coins, it is close. It is close, but close doesn't mean a problem. There are 108 coins. Like Shifting Sandland, once you enter the volcano, you cannot get back, so you've got to be careful. I actually think I missed a couple coins outside, but like we talked about, there are 108 coins. Therefore, I was able to get enough coins to get the star, and everything was great. So that's 5 more stars added to our total. The next star we're going to get, there's actually 3 of these throughout the castle. Toad is just chilling. We actually just talked to Toad, so that's clearly allowed. Free star there. But then I had to enter Hazy Maze Cave. Now, the star I was most concerned about was the 100 coin star. And this is before I knew that Wikipedia broke down the coins to enemy and non-enemy coins. So useful. Chat didn't want to see me struggle and try to explore this very big level for coins. So they let me know right off the bat there were only 92 coins. But to punish them, or because I thought it would be quote-unquote fun, I collected all 92 of those coins. But this is another stage where 100 coins will be impossible. So that's now 2 stages. However, unlike last time, this time around, every other star is accessible. Because while there are a lot of enemies in Hazy Maze Cave, most of the stars don't require us to do anything. Even Dory can be avoided completely, either by doing a speedrunning trick I can't really do, or literally just pressing jump and up a few times. Yeah, it's really that easy. I mean, it's not easy, but like, it's doable. Similarly, you don't need Dory to access the metal cap star. You can actually just slide down where you get star 1, and easy. Metal cap is also pretty easy. Just avoid touching these snippets because you're metal and it will cause them to explode, but not too difficult to just avoid them altogether. So that's actually combining the metal cap and Hazy Maze Cave. That's 7 more stars. I then decided to go and get the final cap stage star, the Vanished Cap. No enemies here, another star. And speaking of stages with 0 enemies, Dire Docks has 0 enemies. There is literally no difference in playing this stage in a pacifist run versus any other run. But Although I was really bad and messed up a few times, this was the first time I actually got all 8 red coins without first despawning the submarine. So if you get star 1, the submarine goes away, and that's what you're supposed to do, and then some poles appear. It's easy. But no, I didn't do that. I instead used the speedrun well, I did a really, really poor approximation of what speedrunners do. But it worked, which is kind of cool. I even did front sub, which, like Dory, requires you to press up and jump in some specific order. But, like, it's cool. I did it a few times. I also messed up many more times. But, yeah. Anyway, for our purposes, the stage is pretty boring. This brings us to the second Bowser stage, Bowser in the Fire Sea. Now, even if I was a robot, 55 stars, since we're going to get the red coin star, is the most amount of stars you would be able to get without damaging any enemy. Because unlike the basement, which is just behind a locked door but is still loaded, the upstairs doesn't even load until you get the key. And so, because of that, you wouldn't be able to beat the game purely as a pacifist. So we have to have the Bowser exception anyway. Also, not relevant to the challenge, but this was the absolute cleanest I ever did Bowser in the Fire Sea, which is both kind of sad because it's not that great, but also if you've played this game at any competitive level, you know that Bowser is really annoying, and I often play versions of the game where I actually don't have to battle Bowser in the Fire Sea, which can talk about that in another video. But yeah, proud of me. Anyway, with 55 stars, I head to the upstairs, and we're gonna get one of my favorite stages, Wet Dry World. Sadly, there are very few enemies in this stage, and thus very little to say about Wet Dry World. There's only 4 Skeeters and 1 Chuckya in the entire level. And so, if you've ever played this game before, you know there's a lot of coins, 135. There's just nothing really difficult or different. There are definitely other challenges where Wet Dry World would be a nightmare, but not in this one. A stage that is always a nightmare is Tiny Huge Island. This is a stage I don't particularly love in challenges, and this is a stage where I'm really questioning how many stars we can really get. Why? Well, the first star is Pluck the Piranhas, requiring us to defeat multiple enemies. That is obviously out. Because we can't get the first star, even though we can easily get the second star, the tip top of the huge island, we're not going to be able to advance the game state to where Koopa the Quick will spawn, thus we cannot rematch with Koopa the Quick, even though we didn't original match with him. Yeah, but that star is not going to be possible either, nor will Make Wiggler Squirm, the final star of this stage. That means, at most, we only have 4 stars. And while there's a ton of coins in this stage, 192 of them, how many of them are locked behind the big Goombas, which if you ground pound them, they give you 5. The Piranhas give you 2. The Koopa gives you 5. The answer is 90. So, as it turns out, there are only 3 stars we can get in Tiny Huge Island. We already talked about Tip Top of the Huge Island. In the Tiny Island, we can get 5 itty-bitty secrets. Just gotta be a little bit careful, since if you run into any Goombas, they just instantly get defeated. And then finally, the red coins. That is it for Tiny Huge Island, another stage where we weren't able to get very much. But don't worry, Tall Tall Mountain, in theory, we could get all 7, but because of the strict interpretation of the rules, we're not going to get Mystery of the Monkey Cage. The reason for this is that grabbing Ukiki, I feel, is against our rules, but there's really not all that much super interesting. Only 26 coins in enemies. There are Bob-ombs, so you have to be very, very careful about this section right here. So that does make this stage kind of interesting, kind of divides it a little bit, but even without using the mountain clip, which I actually forgot how to do, so I didn't use it in this run, you can just use the breeze to bypass that section really easily. And there's really nothing else all that interesting. I mean, you can get to the mushroom without the cannon or the crazy box. I don't know if any of you have ever long jumped from the log, but yeah. 6 stars. That's going to bring us to 72 total, and we're going to enter the last stage on this floor. Okay. We're going to enter the last stage on this floor, Snowman's Land. Now, Snowman's Land doesn't have a ton of coins, and a lot of its coins are located within enemies. In fact, 69 of their coins, nice, are located within enemies. So, only 58 coins available. You can try to get all those coins. It's kind of cool. But sadly, 100 coins, that's going to be out. Is anything else going to be out? Yes. Star 3, Chill with the Bully. Can't defeat the bully, so that's out. But nothing else is. There are a lot of enemies actually in this stage. There are 14 Spindrifts, 3 Goombas, 2 Moneybags, a Fly Guy. I think this stage might have the most enemies, at least most enemies per square foot or square unit. Like, it's not a very big stage and there are a lot of enemies, but only one of those enemies is required to get a star, and so that's another 5 stars in the bank. And already, I should mention, we have passed 70 stars, meaning we could beat the game, we could beat Bowser. So can you beat the game Pacifist? Again, if you're willing to defeat Bowser, the answer is yes. But that wasn't the question we asked. We asked how many stars can you actually get? And there's quite a few more that we can. Tick-Tock Clock is a really cool stage, and I have a lot to say about it, but not in this video. Because in this video, there are 2 enemies. And as long as you avoid both Bob-ombs, and they are Bob-ombs, so you have to be a little careful, all 7 stars, easy. Nothing really to talk about here. But then we get to Rainbow Ride. And Rainbow Ride is where things get really interesting. I will tell you right now that every single one of the stars is possible. However, in the area where you get the red coins, there are Bob-ombs. And if you're not careful, they can absolutely ruin your run. So you've got to be kind of sneaky stealthy when you're trying to get the blue coin switch, which unfortunately you have to get very safely because it is mandatory. There are, in Rainbow Ride, a total of 146 coins, only 22 within enemies, but if you do the math, 124 minus 30 equals not enough. Also, speaking of Bob-ombs on the floating pirate ship, there are 2 Bob-ombs here. I didn't even notice. I had to redo this star afterwards because I didn't even notice the first Bob-omb exploded. So, future Jaros here, making sure I did it properly. But yeah, a little bit of Metal Gear Mario needed again. Unfortunately, other than that, while the stage is kind of tedious and just sort of difficult generally, in the context of a pacifist run, there really isn't that much more to say. Oh yeah, I guess I should also mention that Wing Mario over the rainbow is possible. I hate that stage. I forgot I did it before Rainbow Ride. And that's going to bring our grand total to 94 out of 120 stars. Obviously, I don't have 94 yet. I'm getting the 94th star. It is the red coin star in the final Bowser stage, Bowser in the Sky. I always thought Dark World and Sky should be different. Like, doesn't this look like a Dark World? I don't know. Anywho, that's kind of it for this challenge, though. I mean, I can go and defeat Bowser, but that's not really anything different than you'd see in a normal playthrough. And so I think this is a good point to thank you guys so much for watching this video if you did. I was really, really nervous about making this, to be honest with you. And so a big thank you to Flexispot for believing in this channel enough to offer me a deal. I mean, I'll be real with you guys. I'm just so used to making Pokemon videos at this point that it's a little scary to go out of my comfort zone, but Mario 64 is an amazing game, and I hope to show off other games and maybe more challenges in this game. We'll see. But until then, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate every one of you who watches this bonus content, and I hope to see you guys relatively soon. Take care.